So the DRC, a tale of two hats. That's pretty much how I phrase myself in terms of what my job is and my responsibility here at Cabrini. So of course I wear the hat of Cabrini. I'm here for our students to provide disability support services for them, to remove any barriers to their learning that may exist, to help them to learn advocacy skills regarding their disability, and to provide all that support that may be more visible to others outside of my office. The other hat I wear is about the legal hat that I wear, and that's where you may have heard some conversations about the legal requirements of providing accessible technology to our students. There actually is a legal basis for this. So I kind of just wanted to share that with you, that that's the role of the Disability Resource Center, and that's the role of anybody on any college campus that serves in my role, whether it be called the Disability Office, accessibility, whatever the term might be. There is somebody on every campus that performs the job that I'm performing to balance the scales of justice, to balance the needs of the student with the rights of the student, with the rights and the legal obligations of the college. So it's always that balance. Not always easy, but yet important. Okay, so why should we be concerned about accessibility? Well, yes, there is a legal requirement, and I'm going to share with you some of the basic laws just so you have some background information about why are we legally required to do what we do. But more importantly, it's about our mission, right? If we think about it, we have students on this campus that's part of our diversified nature of the campus who have disabilities. Many of you might know the numbers. We're relatively high, 18 to 20% of our undergrads are registered with the DRC. That's a significant number, almost double what the national average is for other colleges and universities. So we have them. So they're part of our, as our mission states, they're part of our learners of faith, cultures, backgrounds. So it's the right thing to do, right? So why wouldn't we want to make sure our teaching and our materials are accessible? Why wouldn't we consider that? Of course, it's a part of our mission. And to quote some quotes that was part of a short video we're going to show you, it's a commitment to equity and inclusion, enriches the lives of all, and it just should be a part of our value system. So what we do at Cabrini is for every student, including those that have disabilities. So we're going to look at a short video. Kim, I don't know if you looked at it, I sent it to you earlier, but it's called IT Accessibility, What Campus Leaders Have to Say. And you're going to hear some administrators from other colleges, some presidents, vice provosts, CIOs, other individuals from other universities, why they feel this instructional technology accessibility topic is so important and so huge. So I thought it might help us get some background to this topic.
We are committed to the notion that everyone should have an opportunity to participate in higher education, whether it be from the learning perspective or the research perspective or an opportunity to work here at this institution. We benefit from that because we get to enjoy the talents and the skills of those people who come in and also their perspective, which in many cases will be different from the perspective of others on campus. So accessibility becomes a very important value at the university.
We're a leading university globally. We want the best talent in the world for our students, our staff, and our faculty. And we want to be sure if that talent has a disability that they know that we are a welcoming community.
And we're competing with other prestigious and highly accomplished institutions. We want to make sure that we can target the right candidates to join our community, regardless of their disability status.
We want to do everything we can to ensure that they have the same access to smart faculty, to fellow students, and to the resources at UC Davis.
In fact, we genuinely believe that excellence is achieved through diversity and that a commitment to equity and inclusion really enriches each of our lives.
It would be inconceivable not to have a social conscience, at least, and be completely committed to making our resources at Barry University accessible to all students.
We believe that the use of technology can be very powerful. It connects people to each other, but it also enhances their learning capabilities. It increases what they can do through their research and creative work. It really makes it possible for them to have a more powerful impact in the world, and that's basically what we're all about. And we want that to be true for every member of our community, regardless of limitations of physical, spatial, time, or other dimension.
As an IT professional, sometimes some of us concentrated in the technical side of the house only, and we forget that finally the technology is to serve the people.
What the university offers and makes available has to be offered to everybody. We can't afford to waste the talents or the brilliance or the minds of anybody. And making things accessible allows everybody to engage the university. Equal opportunity is a part of our value system, but it's also required by law.
Compliance is extremely important, and compliance is the law, but that isn't the motivator for most of us at universities. Our motivation has always been to provide easily accessible tools, excellent experiences for our students, and really to give them the sense that this is a place they want to be, a place they want to learn, a place where they can thrive.
Universal design is a very powerful concept because what it means is we look at the issue of accessibility at the outset rather than buying something or engaging something or developing something that we have to retrofit, which not only makes it cheaper and more efficient, it likely makes it much better in terms of both the quality of the product and the accessibility to those all the people that we want to be able to use it.
I think the other direction that colleges and universities could and should take is to think about accommodation as really the beginning of the conversation about disability. It was the appropriate measure that was taken in the Americans with Disabilities Act that was passed in 1990, and that's well over a generation ago. I think now we really have to think less about how we're going to measure specifically this accommodation or that accommodation and recognize that we can make accessibility open and available so that individual staff, faculty, or students do not have to go to get an accommodation. It will be automatically available in the web page that they visit, in the device that they use.
We envision a campus that has a concept of universal design in all aspects of information technology, that a student is not impeded in any way, but in fact that technology is utilized not only directly by those who benefit because of certain challenges they may have, but also is illustrative to the broader student body and to the faculty and to alums about what an inclusive learning environment is.
We have some things we have to learn in order to move into accessibility space, but the basic goals and the basic values are things we already know and love. Then we bring in things like universal design, the notion that if we design things well right from the start, they actually aren't more expensive. This is something that we can fit into even our very, very tight budgets.
Now you got 10 minutes.
We make a great effort in our graduate and our undergraduate council to make sure that faculty and deans are aware that in program design, in offering a new major, that they take into account that they might have to have specialized software available and they have to build that into their program development. And then to certainly just be aware of all the different ways that students can learn, to help faculty and deans understand the concept of universal design.
The first step really needs to be an assessment of where we are so we can then inform our planning process, develop plans, implement a project, and then really assess the results of it.
Key to our approach to making sure that our campus and our technology is accessible to people with disabilities is to ensure we do this by design. This is not an afterthought that we do after we have implemented a new classroom. Instead, this is something that we do from the initial conception of a new project or idea. The same way we do this for privacy and security, we do this for accessibility.
It is less costly in the long run to be thinking through the issues of accessibility comprehensively. Therefore, having a plan for accessibility ensures that from the beginning, we think through our issues with regard to the delivery of our services. Doing so in a strategic way means that we can hold down costs over the long haul and actually deliver better services in the bargain.
But it's very important that a university follows a policy and a process that is a can-do kind of process. It assumes that we are going to undertake the investments that we need, we're going to demonstrate the values that we need, that not only address the needs of students who may be challenged with vision or hearing or other disabilities, but also draw on the technology that is not only exciting for those people who are developing the technology, it's intellectually exciting, it provides new jobs for that matter, and it stimulates learning in so many parts of the university. So that attitude of the university administration as well as faculty and staff and students becomes very, very important because everyone gains from this. It's a win-win situation.
A policy really is an important way to go because it will focus everyone's attention. It's also probably the way that you have to go now that there are legal pressures on higher education in this area. The second thing I would say about policy is there are really two types in general. One is a policy that you have because you have a law, for example, the Family Education Rights Privacy Act policy. So you want to be clear and sure that you're going to have compliance on your campus. There's another kind of policy that I would call aspirational policy, and maybe accessibility fits a little bit in both, but you most certainly can err on the aspirational side. An aspirational policy is something you establish for your institution as a path moving towards something, moving forward. It does not have to have 100% compliance because it's really a direction that you're setting strategically for your institution.
I'd say another critical aspect around our strategy is a shared governance strategy, because education is a shared responsibility across faculty, staff, students, vendors. All of us working together have to share in that responsibility. Now, a shared governance process means if you're responsible in delivering the service, then you have an opportunity to share in governing how we're going to manage the implementation of these services.
The administrators of the university must reflect the values that demonstrate the importance of this to the learning environment, and it has to be built in then to every aspect of what we do.
Right now,
We're going to skip forward to just another section.
The last part.
accessibility requires effort on the part of everyone in the higher education community, faculty, staff, technology vendors. If we all do our part, our institutions can provide everyone with an equal opportunity to participate. And we all benefit from the perspectives of a diverse group.
Having that peace of mind that we are doing all we can to provide an accessible campus it gives us a lot of pride, and we feel very happy about what we do.
Why wouldn't we make our campus accessible to students with disabilities, and why wouldn't we do everything we could to see that technology is accessible to our students?
The spirit of what has made higher education the jewel in the crown of American society is part and parcel of the message of accessibility.
Every way in which we touch the lives of others, whether it's in the classroom, the laboratory, through live performances, through events on campus, we want everyone who comes here and creates those experiences to be as fully engaged and as fully benefited by the activity as possible. And that simply can't be done if people have artificial challenges or barriers to try to overcome. I would say to those out there who are just getting started or maybe struggling to figure out how to use technology to advance accessibility on their campuses, that there's no such thing as a bad time to start.
Any thoughts, comments?
Oh, yeah. It mentioned doing an assessment. So have we done an assessment on our campus? Is that your role?
I think all of, as we've been talking about and as the video demonstrates, this is a process, right? It's working towards compliance, and yes, as most things that we start with what we're learning, we have to assess where we are currently.
And one of the things that we've done is through policy number 2, which is before any new hybrid or online course is developed, there's a procedure now that you have to talk to your department chairperson. There's training that's involved, and then at some point it goes to the instructional designer, me, and then I'm going to represent the disability services. So when we look at these courses, maybe just simply like an alt tag on something, or maybe just a formatting these courses, we're reviewing them the best that we can to move forward. Because right now there's really no review process of any courses, and the department chairs are now going to have an active role in reviewing those courses and hopefully addressing little things that we can do now. And that's what the goal of this presentation is to share. It's just some simple things that we can do to make our courses a little bit more accessible.
Right, and that's the thing. It's this conversation starting. We're starting to move forward. I hope that was helpful for you. I thought maybe hearing different perspectives from different colleges and their administrators. This isn't just a Cabrini issue, as we know. It is all across in higher education. So it's important, and it's something that we can start working together as a team. It's definitely a team process. For those who don't know, this is Kathleen Maxon. She's our Student Accessibility Coordinator. Thanks for coming, Kathleen. So in terms of the law, just the background, the big ones, we are responsible to the U.S. Department of Education. The ADA Act, as the one speaker presented, is only a little over 25 years old. It's been in law. So, thank you. So the two primary laws that we fall under, if you will, in terms of our responsibility is just that, the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And basically those laws are to prevent any type of discrimination for students with disabilities. So the ADA is more broad, non-discriminatory practices both in employment, public services, public accommodations, and then it's overseen by the Department of Justice, the DOJ, the Department of Labor, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So Section 504 is more prohibitive against otherwise qualified individual with a disability, and as we say, our students who come to Cabrini with a disability are admitted as an otherwise qualified student. So what that means is our admissions office does not know, unless the student cares to share that the student has any type of a disability. So they are accepted to Cabrini as an otherwise qualified student. The admissions office are not allowed to ask, do you have a disability? Yes, no, because that would be discriminatory in their decision. So once they're admitted as an otherwise qualified student, then they can make that choice to disclose to me or to the disability office that yes, I have a disability, yes, I would like to have accommodations, and then that's where our role starts to kick in. Okay, and we talk about documentation, the disability, what the accommodations might be, and how we can make this happen. But it won't happen until that student chooses to voluntarily disclose that. So could we have other students on campus with a disability? Yes. Sometimes I hear instructors say, I think the student might have a learning disability. Can I have them talk to you? Of course. And I'm getting more and more emails like that. Because having that personal conversation with the student, did you struggle in high school? Some key terms, IEP, that's a document that's made in high school in a K-12 setting for students with special education. They can come talk to me and we can talk about the disability. And then there's the Section 508 law, which more addresses the technology aspect of accessibility. And this is where, campuses everywhere are starting to move forward with providing it in the technology world, if you will.
So like we think about our software, for example, Blackboard is considered an accessible course management system, which is good. But for example, if you're going to do something, maybe bring Prezi into your Blackboard, Prezi is a presentation tool, it's not very accessible. So these are different things we think about as we meet with people who want to, add software to their programs, add different, mobile applications. Are we addressing that accessibility piece, or is there another piece of software that might be more accessible? So that's where Section 508 comes into play.
Right. Yeah.
In the library, we used to have the Kurzweil computers. Do you have them now?
Well, we moved from Kurzweil. There's a complementary software called Rewrite in Gold, and so Kathleen and I have been looking at cost differentiation. Of course, that's what we're all about right now, saving costs. Kurzweil was a very expensive tool for us to have. It's a software program that students can download books in an e-format, and it would read. The pages would appear on the screen. It would highlight and it read the words to the student. It's a very useful tool. They can click on a word. It would provide a definition. You can highlight and extract notes. It's a very useful, robust software. However, we've moved through the University of Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech.
They have an AMAC. Do you want to explain?
Sure. So Georgia Tech offers a package software through their online called AMAC, which is also one of the accessible book databases. And they offer Read Write Gold, which again is a competitor basically of Kurzweil. It does much of the similar functions. They also offer tech support for the students through that, which alleviates some of the technical support. The only issue with this software is that it does require a lot of training for the students to be able to use it effectively. And what I've noticed is a lot of the students might have some challenges learning how to use the technology and therefore might not be as inclined to use it just because of that barrier. But it is a very useful software because it can read aloud the books. It can help the students create study guides, help the students create concept maps for learning, provide definitions, highlighting. It's useful for a lot of our students with learning disabilities as well as visual disabilities, and even some of our students with autism find it helpful to sort of parse out long chunks of text that they might find overstimulating in a regular.
So that software is available in the DRC.
It is.
Nowhere else on
But
campus.
you bring up a good point, and I've had conversations with Mary about this, is that some campuses have site licenses to these softwares, where, and like for example, Villanova has a site license for Kurzweil. So every computer on that campus, computers used by faculty, staff, students, of course, has that software built into it. So everyone has that accessible, is able to access, if you will, these great learning and study tools, not just students with a disability, anyone. And so, Mary, we've talked about.
Yeah, we've talked about putting it into the Mac Lab. And I would tell you, I had a daughter at King's College, and no matter where she went on college, even a bank of computers in a dorm, she always knew that she could access the Kurzweil reader no matter where she was.
So that's a cost, something we have to think about in terms of costs. I mean, right now we have a license for certain computers in the disability world, but having it on the library computers, having it in our education lab, having it, the more accessible to everyone, obviously would benefit everyone. But as Kathleen mentioned, we're learning that we have to offer training workshops to get it to be used. Like anything with the students, we have to tie them into it, pull them in, help them recognize how beneficial this would be for their learning.
Right, and Kathy,
Yeah.
Colleen just made a wonderful point to make that, down in the Mac Lab, even for students that perhaps might be coming in the future who are English language learners, these softwares can be also very helpful to them as well.
Yeah, especially the English language population. Yeah. It can also, some of them translate, but yes, those students, if that's more of what we're going to be seeing, while those students aren't qualified as having a disability of any sort, but certainly have a challenge to their learning, which can be met with some of this accessible software.
And it's using the UDL framework by using
Absolutely.
Right.
And arguably, it could be useful for even students from underprepared backgrounds as well. The use of vocabulary, the listening, the way it reads aloud, that it can provide a lot of good tools. So I mean, I think it can help a lot of students from a lot of different
Yes.
The database for that, for the books, would that include the textbooks and things we use in class?
Yes.
Do you get access to that on your own?
Yes. So what happens if a student needs that alternative format of a text? So they have a print disability of some sort. Opening up a textbook and reading it is a barrier to them. So they still are required to purchase the books. We have to show proof of purchase and hold on a copy of the receipts. However, then they let us know which books they need in an alternative format. There's a couple of options. The Disability Resource Centers provide students with an account to Learning Ally. It used to be called Recording for the Blind and Dyslexic. So they'll get a membership to this service where they can actually have their own virtual bookshelf. It's an organization based in Princeton where folks like you and I volunteer to read a book cover to cover for the print disabled and visually impaired. They can then download your textbook if you assigned it onto their bookshelf. They download the free reading software, and then they can listen to the book being read to them. So we have Learning Ally, we have Bookshare as another source, and then we have Access Text, which is a very large database for higher education textbooks. So we search for that book. They provide us with a PDF. We then download it for the student on a flash drive. They then pull it up into their computer to have it read, so they can see the words and have it read to them as well. If we can't find it through there, we do due diligence. If the publisher isn't utilizing Access Tech, we then contact the publisher. We ask for permission to have it sent in a different format, or permission to. Then we have to break the book apart and scan it page by page. Obviously, that's our last resort, but we are obligated to provide this book in a format that is accessible to the students. So we'll do whatever we can to make that happen. So yes, there's lots of databases out there that we search. And so that's something for faculty too, if possible, to start thinking about, are the textbooks you're requiring, are they publishers that provide accessible formats? Because money speaks volumes, right? And publishers want our money. But yet if it's a publisher that's not providing accessible materials, well, then we might want to move to another publisher who does, right? Because then they're going to be like, oh, wait a minute, we'll make it accessible. We want you back, right? So it's just, how it is in the market world. But we in the disability office search for those books and hope that they are already in an accessible format. Yeah. Kim.
Kathy, is there any, following up on that, are there any online sites or whatever that actually kind of list what's on these two websites that you're talking about? So again, I don't want necessarily faculty's decisions about certain classes to be driven by what is only available on these sites. But, if it's like an introductory class and there are lots of different options, maybe it is easier for a faculty to select one of these things that has multiple access. But is there any easy way for a faculty member to just kind of look up the courses that are on these two sites? Or you just kind of have to...
You mean for different publisher sites?
Yeah. Or not the publisher sites, but
just the
for,
Access Text.
The Reading Ally, Learning Ally?
Learning Ally.
Learning Ally and things like that. Do they just have a searchable list? So,
I think
Kathy
it'd be
McKinley was
best
looking
to
for
actually
intro to
send it to
sociology
us,
course
and
or
we
whatever.
could do that research for
Okay.
them, because we have
That'd be
access to
helpful.
those accounts. Do you
Yeah,
have some
we can just
another thought?
I think with Bookshare and Access, since we subscribe to those databases.
So you could find out what's out there already.
We can check and say, let's just, do, is it before the faculty member assigns?
And that's something we could do for faculty, and we'd be happy to do that. Again, building it from the get-go, from the upfront, and saying, I have a choice between this book and this one. Let me just double check with DRC, are they both accessible as one versus the other? Those conversations would be so helpful in the beginning as the courses are being created. Yes, John?
I would think finding, for something like math or science, where there are a lot of equations or diagrams, it would be a lot more challenging, I would think, to find an accessible book than it would be for a book that has text, primarily text.
Correct.
Is that the case?
Right, and so the challenge is, because that's less reading intensive, because it's diagrams and graphs, the challenge just comes in if we have a student who requires a brailled version of your math book, because that's their only way to access. So, for example, we have a student who might be coming to Cabrini, and he shared this with me, that for his math and science books, he needs those to be brailled. And so that's a service we would have to provide. We would, send it out to the people that we use to provide this resource for us. It is costly, but it is what it is, and we will provide that for the student in Braille to help with those kinds of challenges. But you're right. But the math accessibility is another part that we can talk about. I know you guys have a software for your program as well. Looking at accessibility for that. They're all good questions. So basically, it is just as whatever we do for our students without disabilities on campus, we must provide access to the students with disabilities. Whether going on field trips, as you guys probably know, Frank, Mr. Cabrini, Frank Cornelli, he uses a wheelchair. He wants to go to all these off-campus events, and so we work on getting an accessible van that will transport him with his wheelchair. Okay, so it's just thinking outside the box and just remembering to be inclusive. And so whoever our students are, we must provide the same access. We can't say, oh, you can't go because you use a wheelchair, and that's discriminatory, as you know. It sounds terrible. So anything we offer our non-disabled students, we must make accessible to disabled students. And that includes the communication piece. So the underlying words, accessible format, timely manner, protect the privacy. So that's again where that video discussed the importance, if possible, to really try to build these things in at the beginning of course creation. Because that timely manner is important, and I'll show you some settlement cases that are happening. But the Office of Civil Rights are looking more and more at what higher ed is doing, and so that timeliness is getting smaller and smaller in terms of if we try to retrofit a course for a student, that takes time to get things done and put into place, and by then the student's 3 or 4 weeks into the course. Well, that's not okay in the eyes of Office of Civil Rights, as you can imagine. If it were you or I who went to a class to learn and we needed some accommodation, oh, well, you have to wait a couple weeks because we're not quite ready for you. That's not going to work. So the importance of timeliness is really crucial here in terms of getting better prepared. So the accessible format, so for example, a homework assignment online, a student who's blind has to be able to access whatever that assignment might be. A timely manner. At the same time it's available to other students, we need to provide it to the disabled student. And of course the privacy and independence factor. You know, we want our students to be independent, to advocate for their needs. So for an ebook, the example that I just provided, if they need an ebook versus the hardback textbook, we need to provide it. So this is what the DRC assists faculty with in terms of providing accommodations. I know that you receive your visa documents, but certain things that are on there are actually done by the DRC. So we will arrange for interpreters, a sign language interpreter if needed. We work with faculty on note takers, getting the materials in the right format. Cart notes, have any of you here been when we have a student with captioned audio and real-time cart notes, so a transcriptionist in the classroom? Yeah. Okay, that's a cart note service that we provide, which we will set up and arrange for a student. This is a listening devices like an FM system. Has anybody been asked to wear a microphone of some sort to generate the voice to their ear? Accessible electronic technology and the captioning. So right now, captioning is kind of going through the DRC. I don't necessarily have a line budget for captioning, but we use what we have in our resources to send out captioning that's needed for videos. Some of you are doing flipped classrooms and maybe doing video lectures. We can send that out to have it captioned. Did you notice in the video we watched, it was accurately captioned on the bottom? And that's what we want it to look like for faculty. If you're familiar with YouTube videos, YouTube will caption. It's not accurate. If you've ever seen the captioning of a YouTube video, it's just not accurate, and certainly not equitable to the information you want your students to learn. So to have it professionally captioned is the way to go, and that's what we can do.
I'm a little bit maybe behind the times. If a book comes in an ebook format, that makes it then available?
They can purchase.
Available?
Yes, they can choose to purchase the ebook.
The ebook, but then what? They use a PDF reader or something like that to read it, or?
Yeah, they have their reading software that they can.
That can make it work.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the question. It's a case-by-case situation. I really have to meet with the student to say, is this ebook a way to overcome whatever barrier you're facing? So it's pretty much case-by-case. Good question. Yeah, Sean.
How much, you mentioned timeliness is important, I agree. But how much of the responsibility on the student to tell us in a timely manner? Can you just show up and first day of class, oh, I need this, and it just takes 2 weeks to get it done, if we do.
And that's a good question. And of course, colleges are bound by the term reasonable. Okay, provided reasonable accommodation, and reasonableness can be interpreted in lots of different ways. Is it reasonable, timely? Is it too last minute of a request? I mean, those are all good questions. The counter side of that is students have the ability to disclose whenever. It's kind of an open door. I've had students are coming in right now, and it's April. I have had kids come in the week before finals. Hey, I need extra time. And that's the law. They can disclose whenever. So I think you're right in that if it's something that hasn't been accommodated for, we will have to scramble to try to do as best we can, given that. But that's where that trying to not retrofit, but rather build, makes it that much easier. If it's already more or less built into the course in some shape or form, it's less of asking for the accommodation, whereas it's already built in. And that's what we're going to talk about.
A proactive approach, yes.
Proactive approach. So it is a good point, John, and it's certainly something we talk about, and we do it on a case-by-case basis. but we're here to support faculty, and we have that honest conversation with the student. You know, we do what we can do, and we'll do the best we can. So what if a student complains? And that, you know, this is the part we don't want to hear about, but the student has a right to file a complaint. They're legally protected by law, therefore if they feel that law is being violated, they can complain to the Office of Civil Rights, OCR letter. And they will, so the student complains, writes a letter, contacts OCR, they then investigate. And they'll come to campus, make a visit, ask lots of questions, look at what was happening, what were you doing. We had a situation with a student complained about our handicapped parking, and that was a long process. We had to look at what we were doing, assess what we were doing, what was not in place, where we were perhaps violating his or her rights. And then OCR said, okay, here's a resolution agreement that you, Cabrini, must do. It must be put into place, and then it was gone away. And that's a good thing. We want it to be resolved. We don't want a lawsuit where the college is then found in violation and then money is involved. So OCR...
I already moved you forward.
Hmm?
I already moved you forward, sorry.
Oh, that's fine. So that's again where kind of our role in the DRC is we don't want to put us at risk for possible violation or possible complaint. And so that's why we kind of are very proactive with faculty to kind of just, you know, be aware and let's have a conversation, let's see what we can do so that we would mitigate this. So the question once came up, is online accessibility held to a higher standard? No. And the reason is that whether it's a face-to-face course, an online course, or a hybrid course, it's the same. We have to have the same standards. I think it's becoming more of a conversation now because up until now, most of our classes were face-to-face, right? And we're moving towards online and hybrid, which is opening up a whole nother dimension of our teaching, but it's also opening up a whole nother dimension of what we're providing for students. We don't know who the students are behind those names that sign up for an online course. And those students behind those names could need access in a way that we aren't aware of right away. So we have to. So it's just getting more conversation now, but it doesn't mean it's held to any higher standard. It's the same. We must provide accessible course material for any of the courses that we're offering. You know, and as the video alluded to, it's just that colleges are getting looked at more closely now because we're all in higher ed moving in this direction. This is just a quick overview of some of the settlements that have happened, some cases in the disability world. We don't want to be the poster child for an OCR complaint. And so if you look at some of these, University of Cincinnati, Youngstown, a complaint was filed for inaccessibility of websites. Okay, you can see the resolution. University of Montana, all the issues where they were held in violation. Videos without captioning. Louisiana Tech, inaccessibility of course materials. They had an OCR complaint filed against them. South Carolina, and then further down is a big one from Penn State. Penn State had a huge one. They were complaint was filed by the National Federation of the Blind. As you know, Penn State's a huge school, and that was a big one where they had to then invest a lot of money to make their campus accessible, every aspect of it. If you scroll down a little bit, not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom. UC Berkeley. Okay, so these are some of the big settlement cases that we in the disability office look at and go, okay, what was the resolution? So that we go, we better start doing this, right? So nobody wants to be the poster child for these lawsuits. And so we learn from our peers, and then we talk to them, and okay, how did this get resolved? So that we're moving forward in a way of being proactive and, you know, kind of trying to be in compliance as much as we can. So the next part of this is Andy, we're talking about universal design in action. It's a framework for good teaching, a model for student access and success. And so we're hoping some of these tips and tricks will be applicable for you in your course development.
So the way I want to start off is start off with some simulations, just so you can get an idea of what some of these students are dealing with. The first one is a cognitive simulation. And you're basically given a series of 3 tasks to perform on the website. And you're going to notice the tasks are in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. So as you begin the simulation, you're going to have to do these 3 tasks, but also making sure you don't drop this little bomb that keeps falling. So I'm going to ask for a volunteer. And if you volunteer, you get one of these fancy
Yes, we have
flash drives from Cabrini College that we're trying to get rid of. All right. So do I have any volunteers, or I get to pick on people? Because when I was in K through 12, I used to pick on students.
That makes it so enticing. You're trying to do this.
I know. All right. So let's see. I'm gonna
Look
get
at the hands in
Tom. Tom looks like he wants to come on up here and take a shot at.
I was scratching my back.
And we're gonna let him even. We'll even let him do the easy one for you, Tom. Okay.
You're brave soul, Tom. Thank you.
So the arrow keys are going to move the little man on the screen when we get to it, and then ultimately you're trying to complete 3 different tasks, and you're going to see the tasks show up on the screen. Okay.
Okay.
So we'll get you started.
So right here.
So those are your tasks.
Quit it.
So
Wait, well, I'm supposed to move?
well, you're supposed to keep catching the arrow keys. Oh, you missed them. So these are your tasks right here.
I stunk at that.
So you have to click on the center's director's email address, complete the site survey, and then click on the picture of the penguin.
Okay.
Meanwhile, making sure you catch the bomb so it doesn't fall.
Okay.
All right, at the same time.
So it's simulating
Wait.
I think it's X and Z.
what
there.
students are being asked to do.
So you got to move over with the
If they
X,
have
catch
any
it.
kind of a
There you go.
cognitive
okay.
challenge.
But at the same time, you got to click and do this over here.
Yeah, forget about it.
So it's very challenging, but this is an
Okay,
example.
You tried.
Good job.
Thank you for participating.
Oh.
Look, he's sweating. That was really hard.
Thank
But
you.
the point being, simulating our
And that was
students.
easy.
Our students.
And when we talk about distractibility, when you're laying out your course, if there's multiple things going on, a student's trying to accomplish a variety of different things, it becomes a challenge, as you saw with Tom. So when we lay out our course, we talk about laying out headings first, bullets, just organization, simple things for distractibility. The next one is a dyslexia simulation. Where's my mouse at?
None of the education faculty can participate because you guys would ace this, I'm sure.
I lost my mouse.
That's the one you want to bring up. And then you're like, oh my god, I got that question wrong.
All right.
Kind of like on Jeopardy, never look at your...
Come here. There we go. So this simulation is going to give you an idea of what it's like to interact with web content from a perspective of an individual with dyslexia.
Dyslexia, for those who don't know, is a learning disability that involves a print disability of reading words. Dyslexia, unable to read words, and so sometimes letters can appear reversed to them. They struggle with decoding of words. So, letter reversals, B's and D's, are very common with it.
So it's going to have a paragraph for you
That you have
to
to
read.
read.
You don't have to get out of your chair. All right. So I'm going to give this to everyone to see if they can try to read the paragraph. You don't have to say it out loud. Just see if you can read through this paragraph.
Ready?
Yeah, it's just too-
Oh.
That's a disability.
Disability here.
Yeah, there you go.
Seriously.
Yeah.
With the Zoom text?
Give us a larger view.
Yep.
There you go.
Images.
I'm too big.
Yeah.
Anybody read it?
She's good. Hardly.
Anybody want to give it a try? Colleen's like, I got this.
Images are...
Who wants to read it? Colleen, you want to read it? Go ahead.
I don't know how well I would do.
Go ahead.
Would a text-only site be ideal for someone with a reading disorder? Would a text-only site be ideal for someone with a reading disorder? Hardly. Images are not that accessible or not for accessibility.
Not bad.
They actually increase comprehension and something for word analysis maybe?
Most audiences?
Yeah, most audiences.
But what's necessarily
All right.
You did better than me. When I first presented this, I gave it to Kathy. She read it right away, and I couldn't get past the first sentence. So.
Okay, so imagine the struggle. How a student with disability, up here, you had a prize.
Oh, I don't know. Give it to someone.
Give it so somebody with dyslexia would struggle and take that much longer to do a reading assignment because in their mind, in their world, things do look jumbled. It takes a lot more to decode each and every word. And as you know, some of our reading material is very dense with vocabulary.
Yeah, it actually has to do with the processing. A lot of times they think that
it's really the phonetic piece of the language. They have difficulty with the phonetic pieces of language, and then understanding, which is the morphemes or morphology of language. So they really have a difficulty with shifting literally in their brain, and they've done a lot of research the last 20 years, I guess, with looking at brain imaging using MRIs, and they can actually see how the brain is actually different for people with dyslexia. It's really fascinating.
Certain areas of the brain are not firing up like they would for those of us who don't have dyslexia and reading.
So it's fascinating.
So what's this one?
The next one deals with vision, how you see things. And if you look at this right now, this is normal, so hopefully it looks normal to everybody. If not, see Kathy. No, I'm just kidding. But if you have like a macular degeneration, what would happen is you start to see spots. And then if you look at like a cataract, if we zoom in a little bit, it's fuzzy. Glaucoma. All right, so you'd have to move your eye around the screen to see it. So these are just things that, you may not know a student has that, but just something to think about. And our last one is an example of a screen reader simulation.
So people with visual impairments, the screen reader does just that. It tells them what's on the screen, everything.
Okay, so outside websites that we send them to they will be able to translate.
If the website's accessible.
And we will know this. How?
University of the Antarctic home. Table with 3 columns and 7 rows.
So,
link. Graphic. Link for
so it's speaking to you, but you got to imagine that you're blind. So you won't see anything. There's nothing on the screen. But it's saying all the alt tags, all the image tags, all the link tags, and this is what a student would hear. So if I stop the sound real quick.
It's very,
Okay.
Oh my God.
right?
But if I go to, let's see.
Is that how it actually works?
That's a computer-generated voice.
That's computer.
The good news is that computer-generated voices are becoming more and more human-like. They actually have accents. Like you can get someone with a British accent if you like to read it. But the point is, or a man or a woman, it really they're offering students more choices in terms of what's natural to their world.
And if you think about when you post a picture, for example, in Blackboard, if you don't give it a name, it just says image. So when someone leaves this with a screen reader, it'll say image, image 1, image 2, image 3. They don't know what the image is. So just that simple little section where it says fill in what it is helps a person with a screen reader.
Identify your images,
Yeah.
so that someone can say, "Oh, we're looking at a picture of penguins in the Antarctic."
Right.
So we talk about accessibility, and I always like the proactive approach. Make all documents accessible before posting on web or on online course. And some of the things we're going to talk about today is how to make them accessible. A reactive approach is, I'll do this when requested. Someone says, I have a student in my class that has a disability. Now I'm going to adjust all my documents. If we do everything beforehand, it's going to make our life easier and make it accessible. Videos should be captioned before scheduled or be shown. Obviously, we don't have the resources to caption every single video. So what I've been telling faculty members, even a YouTube caption is not great, but it's better than nothing. So at least we're trying. One of the things we're working towards is trying to get a video management system in here that's going to caption videos, everything that we post. And just things like, for example, clickers in the classroom. They make clickers that have Braille on them, so if a student could just feel the clicker and know it's number 5, number 4, etc. So little things that we could do to improve this. So some of the things that we have at Cabrini is we have our course management system, Blackboard. We have lots of text about documents, videos. We have chats, we have Twitter, we have Collaborate. There's all these different resources out there. So how are we supposed to make all of these accessible? Here's how we're going to do it. If we just take an example of who would benefit. For example, students who are blind. We could do electronic text with a screen reader using Microsoft Word. We could do PDF files for them. We could do web pages for them. Students who struggle with reading, we could do text-to-speech applications. We have accessibility features built into the computer inside system preferences that we can use. So there's a variety of different things that we have available to us that are free that we don't need to purchase additional things for. So we're going to just talk about, for example, Microsoft Word. And one of the things that a lot of people probably don't know, there's an accessibility checker built into Microsoft Word. It only works on a PC though, so I have to switch because it's not available for the Mac. But if you have a document in Microsoft Word, and the document that I have is the 2016 syllabus guidelines.
Oh,
Don't
that's so
don't tell Mary. I'm checking her document for accessibility. But under File, there's a section for info, and it says check for issues. And there's a button that says check accessibility. Takes this whole document and gives me an inspection report, some warnings. So, for example, infrequent headings. If I click on it, this is not considered a heading because it's all in capital letters. Unclear hypertext. So this has cabrini.edu, cabrini.edu library. What you would need for this is a tag on it that would basically say links to cabrini.edu. So it's missing a tag. A heading is too long. And then one of the things that most people don't never think about is there's extra spaces you put in here. It will say space, space, space. You know, so there's 4 characters of spaces here, 4 characters of spaces here. So there's just little things that whoever created this document put some extra spaces in.
It's things to think about to make it just.
Oh, okay. Things to think about.
That's all.
First part I put.
So what's the problem with spaces for the
Well,
reading?
for a
of the
screen reader,
document?
they're hearing space.
When you're on a screen reader, they would
They're
hear.
gonna hear, that's for
Right.
right.
So it's just.
Is it necessary or not?
Right.
Is it something
And
we
I-
can change? You know, it's really just
Right.
thinking.
And I'll be honest, when I create documents, I don't do the accessibility checker for every document.
Right.
But if I was going to create something for an online class, this is where I would say, you know, I'm going to be using this document over and over again. Take the extra, 2 minutes to address some of the issues is what I would do. So,
Does it tell you how to fix it then?
we'll see, like if you click on it, it'll say these are the 4 characters. It highlights them. So you could just go in there and then I could delete.
Okay. I'm thinking that came out of a cut case.
Yeah. Right, it could have come out of a copy paste, things like that. Let me go back to my
Is
Mac.
this in PowerPoint as well?
That is in PowerPoint as well, yes.
Okay, 'cause I'm thinking of-
It's also in Excel too.
Excel.
Yeah, so the 3 of them.
Now, the PowerPoints that we put up, they can be read aloud through the PowerPoint. No.
You can read them yourself.
Well, that's
Oh, for the screen readers, we're reading a PowerPoint.
Yes, you can even have the computer read it to you in the PowerPoint.
But that is not something I built in.
No, it's already built into PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah. If we think about, where's my thing at? PDF documents, Adobe Acrobat Pro has an accessibility checker as well, and I have a link on the website. It does something very similar to Microsoft Word. But recommendations for students using screen readers, I always recommend providing that Word document or convert it to HTML, because sometimes students will print out that PDF and they'll want that to be captioned or read back to them, and then you scan it as a JPEG or a picture file. And if you scan it as a picture file, OCR software doesn't recognize it. So if you already created the PDF anyway using Microsoft Word, you could just put the Microsoft Word version in, and then they could have it read back to them. When converting from Word to PDF, I try to put as much accessibility into the Word document as possible. So, when I look at that accessibility check, I make those changes, then I convert it to the PDF. When converting from PowerPoint to PDF, it's better just to create a text version. So in PowerPoint, you can go to File, Save as Text, and that text version a student can access. So you could start to create layers inside your classroom of here's the PowerPoint, here's a text version of it, here's a Word document of it. It just gives different options for students because you never know who that student's going to be, but you do it once and you never have to do it again. And then you can just keep that in your class.
You know what, for reserve readings, I'm just thinking, or required readings, the databases that the library subscribes to provide the audio. It's already there. You just click on it. So you can provide both of those. You can provide
Perfect,
the
right.
HTML, you could provide the PDF, and then the audio version. It's already there.
Great. So just as some examples, and I've seen this with faculty members who think they scanned a book and, obviously you can't read that. It's very inaccessible. So, as you're scanning things, you need to really make sure that you can read it.
And that's what the softwares will do. Optical character recognition. It will convert this into the words, optical word recognition,
Right.
and that's what the software will do. And it takes a little bit of time, but it runs the PDF through the software to make that conversion possible, so that it's not seen as an image, but rather as text.
What I've found is that students will download PDFs from their professors and then the student has to convert it themselves, or we have to convert it, and the student gets frustrated and gets annoyed that it wasn't
It's
done.
just another step that could be done relatively easily. And
So when you're having a PDF, you can go to File, Save As, and you can save it as different versions, is what that means. So instead of saving it as a regular JPEG version, you could save it as an OCR compatible. There's different ways to save a PDF document inside Adobe Acrobat. Some of the other features that I like and I share is there's different extensions within your web browser. So you can use Safari, has extensions, Internet Explorer, Chrome. A few of them that are in Chrome is it browses the text of web pages using arrow keys. And what that allows students to do is to just use their arrow keys and listen to the text. So it's a free widget. It's not a widget, it's an extension. Widgets are from Macs. An extension that you can add in so that students can use text and hear the words and start to just use their text to go slower or faster using their fingers. So they control it and can listen to it. An alt text viewer replaces all the images with that alt text. So if it was an image of a bicycle, it would say bicycle. It would speak to the students. Color enhancers allows you to improve the colors for perception, high contrast to invert colors to make web pages easier to read. One of the things I talk about is when you're developing your course or developing any project, you want to just use colors that are, white background, black text. If you start doing weird colors and backgrounds, it makes it difficult for some students. And then as you start to look at websites, there's a web accessibility checklist. So I decided to look at Cabrini College's website for accessibility. So let me open my link up. So this site here allows you to type in any address you want, and it will tell you whether it's an accessible website.
if not, what needs to be done.
Right, and if not, what needs to be done.
So for departments building their own websites, this would be good to do this check before you launch it, to make sure what you're posting on your website is in fact accessible.
Now it's not working. But with Cabrini.edu, it did bring up a couple errors, and it doesn't look like their website's working right now, but some of the errors that it brought up was that it was missing 23 different errors. So, for example, alt tags on their buttons right here, there was no alt tag on it. Up here on the search bar, it was missing one of the headings. So there's HTML, which is hypertext markup language, that goes with every single website. So as you're designing a website, you need to make sure you put in alt tags, different things like that. Now we're redesigning our website anyway, and every website that I found usually has some sort of error, but as you think about departments, each department has access to their own personal site within Cabrini.edu. So as you're putting up a picture, adding that alt tag, or if you're going to do a link, instead of saying click here, you should just write the text. Right. Go to my website, and the word my website would be the link. So you don't write click here. So this accessibility will also give you ideas. So if you're referencing, students to go to a certain site, and maybe there's 3 different choices. You run it in this wave accessibility, and we'll tell you which site might be better or not. And then another site I use talks about Web 2.0 tools, and this is called Web 2 Access. And what it allows me to do is, if I was looking, for example, a presentation software, so there's a lot of different presentation softwares I could pick from. If I wanted to use Prezi is only 37% accessible, so it's not very accessible. And the reason why it's not accessible is Prezi is a Flash-based website, and Flash is an application that has a lot of dynamic HTML, a lot of movement, etc. But if I used, for example, Google Drive to do it, or Google Docs, it's 89% accessible. So as you're thinking about different pieces of software, maybe you want to run it through here. And this also gives an idea of, say for example, I was looking for calculations. There's none in there. Bad choice.
Well, while you're searching for that, this also comes into play if you're asking your students to make presentations. I mean, on my other side, when I was teaching, students might use Prezi for a PowerPoint presentation. That's part of their course requirement. So that in itself wouldn't be accessible if there was a student in their class that needed to pull up their presentation to be able to access it. Just things to think about.
Mapping tools, Google Maps is 66% accessible compared to Community Walk Map. So there's just different things that might be helpful for you. So next we want to talk about some of the things inside of Cabrini Learn. And one of the handouts that I gave you is called Accessibility and Usability, Best Practices for Learn, the Learning Management System.
It's the last part of your packet.
And let's open this up. funny. All right, so one of the courses that I want to share is we now have an online learning faculty course. And in this course, I'm just going to go in the student mode real quick. There is different modules for faculty members, and anybody's welcome to go through this course. It's self-paced. It talks about how to develop an online learning course. But one of the modules that we developed with conjunction with Disability Services is a module on accessibility, so that faculty members could be aware of, what is accessibility and how does it relate to you. And I'm not going to go through this. You can go through this on your own, but we have some videos, and then we have modules. And each module talks about a few things. So we have a module dealing with web content. When you're developing, websites within Blackboard, things to look for. Creating accessible Word and PowerPoint documents. And then alternative means to assignments. So there's a document that talks about, if you're going to do, for example, an e-portfolio, what could you do instead of an e-portfolio that might be available for a screen reader? And resources. So this is something that's available within Blackboard. And if you want to go into the course on the Instructional Technology website, which is...
I think we added everyone here, right?
Oh, yeah. I think I already added you, yes.
So if you signed up for this course, we've added you already as a student?
Yeah, so you're already in the course. But if you didn't sign up, under the Cabrini Instructional Technology website, under workshops, there is now the 3 courses that we created, and their self-enrollment code. So you can just click on it, and you type in your self-enrollment code, and it will enroll you in the course. So this online faculty course is going to show you a lot of things that's going to be helpful for you as you develop your courses. Now, if we go back into Cabrini Learn, I'm just going to go to my test course real quick. And let me pick out, create an item. So now, inside of Blackboard, when you create an item, there's a lot of different choices over here. So, say for example, I was just going to create some text for students. So maybe a welcome to EDG 644. Now, in this packet that I gave you dealing with accessibility, it talks about things to think about with inside the editor. Now, Blackboard is an accessible course management system. So as long as you use the editing features here, it's going to make your course accessible. Now, when you start attaching Word documents, PowerPoints, things outside of Blackboard, that's where accessibility is going to come into play, and you have to think about what you're adding. So, for example, one of the things is we have our headings. Okay, and if you create a heading, it's going to make it a little bit bigger, and when you do that, it creates a hierarchy for accessibility for a variety of users. So instead of just changing the size of your text to make it bigger, if you choose an actual heading, when a screen reader looks at that, it's going to place more emphasis on the word heading or whatever that title is. So when someone's looking at that, there's more emphasis. And it's simple if I wrote, welcome. It's bold right now and it's in the heading format. I could have, just wrote welcome and tried to make it bold and bigger. That would not be considered a heading. That's just changing the size of the text. So that's one little tip and trick. Another little trick is text size. I always recommend sticking with the default text size, which is usually size 12. As you start to make text bigger and smaller, it's just more to read through, more confusion for students. If you think about that distractibility simulation, I have large text here, small text, and it's all mumble jumble. So if you're going to do something with text, I recommend just keeping it simple, keeping it at the 12 point.
Can I mention something?
Yeah.
The font, the style of the font, it's best to use a sans serif type of font, like Arial or Comic Sans. The ones like the what's the typical
Times New Roman.
Times that has the extra little edges to their letters. You know what I'm talking about? That makes it more difficult for some students with learning disabilities to read. So it's best to use
Comic Sans is
Comic Sans,
yeah,
Arial. The ones that don't have this extra serifs with it.
So if you look at, for example, Verdanda, same type of thing. That's one of those types of fonts. That's a sans serif font. Now it provides, Times New Roman in here as well. No, but it shouldn't. But if you notice, the first time you open up an item, and I didn't change this, it defaults to Arial. And the reason it does that, that's an accessible font.
Okay.
So it automatically defaults to that for you.
So what are the accessible ones? Which one on our list there?
Right. So, well, this one doesn't give it a good example of it, but like
Times New Roman has those extra little
I just
parts.
want to know the ones that we should include.
Times New Roman.
That you should or shouldn't include.
Should.
Oh,
Should. Oh, so Arial, Verdanda,
Comic Sans.
Okay.
Comic Sans, Georgia. There's a few of them.
Not courier name.
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I have to check it out.
I just know there's. I usually use Arial, Verdanda. Yeah. Someone's trying to video conference into us, but no one's answering the phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be okay.
Another thing that I've noticed some people like to do is they'll be taking some text and they'll want to underline the text to show some emphasis. The problem is when you underline it, most people would think that's a link to another. Usually an underline is a link to something else. So if you start underlining text, someone would probably go across this trying to figure out why I can't link to something. So this is not really an accessibility thing. This is just, best practices. Don't underline text because a link will be underlined. Things to think about that regard. Text alignment. The best thing is left aligned text. It's easier for the eye to go down the page on the left instead of having justified or right alignment center. When you add a link, so if I was going to, and now I have it underlined.
Insert the link.
So instead of saying click here to Andy's site, you just write the words Andy's site, and then you would create your link for it. There's no need to say click here. That's just confusing to most people.
Again, some of these things are just to kind of get you thinking outside the box. I know, we recognize we're putting a lot out at you today, but things that maybe you hadn't thought about.
Colors, it's easier just to, as we saw in the one simulation, a white background, black text. As you start to play with, and I've seen some people's sites, they have lots of, different color backgrounds, and it looks very pretty, but depending upon who the audience is, who the student is, it may be distracting to them.
And some students then who need that different contrast have it built into their software that they own. So they can then take that document and manipulate it for themselves if in fact it's easier for them to read with a black background and white lettering. But it's more on them to make that decision. If we're presenting it in the best plain format, if you will, they then can adjust it on using their technology tools.
And then,
the same way, I've eliminated, or I started eliminating using colored Sharpie or Expo markers on boards because I had students who had contrast issues. I also I've had some weird number of students with red-green color blindness, so I might be emphasizing different things and they can't tell the difference. So I actually shifted to just black and white, even though it's not as pretty. But I'm trying to mimic the same kind of thing in my whiteboards, and that seems helpful with some students.
when you're putting up files, one of the things I like to do, and you'll see on my website, I'll put after the file that is a URL. It goes to a website, or if it's a DOC for a Word document or PDF, it just gives people the option of knowing what type of document they're going to get when they open this. And it's also, if there's that frustration, this doesn't open, why is it not opening? So when I developed my course, I just put a little parentheses, what the document is, so they are just a little aware of that as well. When you're putting an image in, you could browse your computer, get the image anywhere you want. But right here where this description is, this is what helps, and I'm guilty of it. I don't fill it out. And if I just took an extra minute or two to write in, a description of a bicycle, and then the title bicycle, for someone who is blind, they could easily now be accessible. Now, instead of the student who comes blind next year, I have to go back and fix all my stuff. So it just only takes an extra second. I know we're always busy to move forward and just put the image in and move on, but those little things are a big difference. And then I just wanted to show everyone briefly the example. Of what it would look like. So this is just an example. It would be wrong to say click here for information about Cabrini Instructional Technology. Wrong to list the link. The right would say learn more about Cabrini Instructional Technology. They know it's a link when they put their cursor over it. It changes to a link. For example, here's a picture of a bicycle. Example names bicycle, man riding bike, 18th century riding bicycle. When you're doing a table, here's an example of a table, and a screen reader will interpret this from left to right. So if this is your table we're looking at, the screen reader would say week assignments, due date, week 1, planning for a successful semester, planner image must complete a goal statement January 5th.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right?
So did it make sense to put this in a table? Could we have designed this a different way? Did this have to be in a table?
Right.
And then I talk about just in the course, formatting, how to, use standard accessible fonts. There's the question about the default fonts provided. Here's text that's embedded in the image. A screen reader is going to read just the image. It's not going to read this text. So this is part of a picture.
Okay.
So it says logo image. A screen reader is not going to say logo image because it's a picture file.
It's a picture.
So if you wanted to say logo image, you'd have to make it, actual text that you would alt text or text within your document.
Are you to move it away from being on top of the?
No, I'm saying this is one big picture file.
So to
Right.
label the picture for what it is.
Right.
In words.
Okay.
Even though that looks like it's word, it's not going to be read as a word. It's going to be read as a picture.
When you think about contrast, white on black, black on white. Bad would be maroon on black, green on red. I mean, most of this is right, similar stuff. And then I talk about some web accessibility. So I'm not going to go through this. I just want to make this as a resource for you that you can go through and learn about, accessibility and some of the strategies that we talked about in this class, but more strategies that we don't really just have time to discuss, Tom.
Just real quick, so for tables, one of the obviously big things is do rubrics, and in syllabi, obviously that's usually table format. So using my assumption, because it's accessible friendly according to Blackboard, but I've not actually played. I've used the rubric builder in there, like I was talking earlier
Right,
in
at the-
another meeting. It's very cumbersome, it's a pain in the neck, but if we do use that to build in there, will that read properly then to the student, the rubric?
It's still going to read left to right.
But it will read left to right. Okay.
Right.
But it will read it better than.
Right. My example was bad because I threw a picture in the middle of the rubric.
But there's
and that's why I made
the
it.
built-in tool in Blackboard.
But if we use
Yeah.
that built-in rubric builder tool
It'll
in there,
work.
that will make it better for.
It will make it better than if you just created it in Microsoft Word
Okay,
and
that's-
brought it in.
okay.
So we hope this was helpful for you today. We recognize we're giving you a lot, but again, we just wanted you to be aware. I guess is the big word here. Be aware of things that maybe you hadn't thought about. Know that this is a team effort. Know that we are just moving forward, and we're going to do it one step at a time. But just I think helps to kind of start that
Yeah, that's really
conversation more about what we're all doing in our classes for our students. Sharon?
When I think about this, one of the things I can see myself doing is saying, well, I have to make this accessible, and I don't know how to do that, so I'll just leave it out for everybody. And I can see that happening, and then I think we can, make our courses weaker or not as entertaining or, like just an illustration there. If I'm going to illustrate something, just to make the students warm up to it or something. And I said, well, I'll just leave the illustration out because maybe there's a blind person that can't read it. So,
Well, we're hoping that you see that some of these changes are very simple and quick, and it may just be, and Andy's provided a checklist, so maybe just a quick click of the.
But it's not even that it's bothersome to do it. It just seems like it's not helpful to them. Then they just got to hear one more word that there's a picture there, and the picture doesn't mean anything.
Well, if the picture doesn't mean anything, why would you include it if it's not really?
Maybe it makes the students laugh.
Well,
But to
So
speak
it's
to
like
actually
a
Sharon,
funny picture of a baby. I mean,
But
that
to-
doesn't make it, the person that doesn't make the student laugh. If they just hear those words, if you see the funny picture of a baby,
Right, and there's some. I mean,
there's
Right.
some funny trade-offs that way.
but I think also for that point, it's still good for then a visual learner who can see.
Thank you.
To see that reinforces that learner. And then, yes, unfortunately, for better or worse, the blind person doesn't get the same maybe emphasis, but they at least hear of why maybe someone was laughing at that picture, because now you're hitting a number of different learning types. Because I'm more visual, like that graphic with the stop. I like that. You know, when I first glance. But it's a combo text.
I don't like that.
And for a blind person,
It's already been approved, so we're not changing it.
can help with that.
And they're used to that.
They're used to that. So they can see. So that description, funny picture of a baby, that might make the blind person laugh. Even if they can't see that, the words, the description, that is their way of interacting.
Like somebody signing for someone, they don't hear people laughing and clapping. The sign language person will describe, they're laughing and this is why, this was funny. So it's about opening up our world to helping them to see and hear what we're seeing and hearing without any assistance.
And this is the support mechanism we have in place. So if you're developing a hybrid online course, it goes to the department chair, and then ultimately when you get to step 4, you have web resources, disability services, library, and this is where this blue circle comes into instructional technology. So there's those resources as you're developing courses and you're thinking these ideas, feel free to reach out to myself or Kathy or anybody, and happy to assist. Everybody's found out where I am now, so no, I'm more than happy to help.
We hope it was helpful.
Thank you.